The market is more demanding than ever. Deadlines are tighter. Budgets are thinner. Expectations are higher. This is not the era of task managers. This is the era of project leaders. Strategy means nothing without execution, and execution collapses without leadership. So the question is not whether projects matter. The question is whether you're equipped to lead them. Welcome to Project Management Masterclass, where we sharpen the mindset, frameworks, and discipline required to turn strategy into measurable results.
True or false? An organization cannot make fast, confident decisions when every department operates from different data. Engineering sees one version of reality. Sales sees another. Manufacturing operates from different assumptions, and leadership looks at dashboards fed by multiple data sources. So, what is the common thread that brings all of this together? What creates a single source of truth across the organization? Recently, I attended the CLM Summit, and there were conversations around AI, manufacturing transformation, lifecycle alignment, configuration management, digital threads, product complexity, and intelligent configuration. But underneath all the technology discussions was a deeper issue. Organizations are struggling to maintain visibility, coordination, and operational clarity as complexity increases faster than their systems can adapt. One of the strongest themes throughout the summit was this idea. AI without structured operational foundations only scales complexity faster. And this statement matters because many organizations have been racing towards the AI implementation since it first disrupted into the market. However, in some instances, this has been done without first addressing the execution systems underneath the work itself. But the summit wasn't revealing a new problem. Product complexity has existed for decades. Software integration isn't new. Global compliance isn't new. Customer customization isn't new. What's changing is the level of coordination required to manage all of these together. Organizations are being asked to manage more data, more dependencies, more customization, and more interconnected systems than ever before. Complexity is not new. Maintaining visibility across that complexity is becoming increasingly difficult. You see, in many organizations, they still operate with disconnected systems, disconnected data, unclear ownership, and unseen operational visibility not known to all. And one of the strongest statements I heard during the summit was complexity is not the problem. Losing control is. And that line really stood out to me because it perfectly describes how many organizations of what they're experiencing and going through right now, which is loss of operational coherence or loss of operational synergy. Do you agree? As it can be seen, the more complex organizations become, the harder it becomes to coordinate decisions, maintain visibility, align teams, trust the data coming from various places, understanding dependencies across the many different systems, the data in the teams, and respond quickly under pressure. And this is the case if the mechanisms where all this data and information resides is operated independently with no synergy that ties all the systems and all the data together. And one of the reoccurring themes throughout the summit was the importance of connected systems, connected data, and configuration logic. So how connected are you within your organization? Now, as we look at connected systems, connected data, configuration logic, on the surface, it sounds highly technical, but underneath it, it is an execution issue because disconnected systems and tribal knowledge can no longer support operations that are trying to scale at a faster pace. And that was one of the clearest messages for me coming out of the summit. And really, this extends far beyond manufacturing because when every department operates from different information, what happens? Sometimes you see organizations beginning to create roadblocks internally, and that leads to that operational friction happening. And going back to what I mentioned at the beginning of the show, where you're seeing that is engineering may update one system, sales may quote from another system, manufacturing may be operating from their own systems, assumptions, or SOPs. And then also, too, you have maybe service teams may not fully understand the lifecycle changes after deployment with this way of working. And then you have the leadership team who is trying to make decisions with information that comes from various multiple sources that have been pieced together by the individuals in the teams to roll it all up and be able to report out on. And we know that business is governed and carried out by people, and we are imperfect. Full moment of transparency. And it is understood that things will not be perfect. And I'm not here to say that business needs to stop because every part of business is not perfectly tied together or synergized across the many different systems that make the business go. But even knowing this, and the one question that came up repeatedly during the summit, do you know this? Do you know the answer to this question? Where is your product knowledge? This is definitely a powerful question. Where is your product knowledge? Where does it live? Because oftentimes, in many cases, we don't fully understand where operational knowledge lives, who owns the data, how the systems connect together, which dependencies exist, and how one change impacts downstream operations. And what can this do over time? Create instability. And again, we don't wait for perfect conditions. But what has to be taken into account is that when complexity compounds, we have to ask ourselves, are we still able to get the quick wins and maintain pace in the market wherever we are positioned at, wherever our industry is positioned at? Just something to think about, because you may be sitting there wondering, well, I don't need to know where our product knowledge lives or who owns the data, how systems connect together, which dependency exists, how this change impacts me because I do this job, I'm in my own corner of the world. But again, as businesses are trying to grow and scale and a lot of the strategic initiatives begin to tie many of these different systems and data together, this is where key questions like this begin to emerge. I've experienced this firsthand and beginning to, when I kind of elevated from a project manager to a program manager to a project leader, beginning to lead a lot of these high-level strategic initiatives and having to understand not just a piece of the ecosystem and not just the task that may be done, but the broader ecosystem that connects this all. Now, another key question to consider, in the era of artificial intelligence. If you're leveraging AI today, is it helping you create reliable outcomes? And not just reliable outcomes, but if your organization itself lacks the structure, the governance, and trusted operational foundations, how reliable is AI in helping you to address many of the issues, the opportunities that you're tasked with? Because as I sat through this summit, one of the insights that hit home for me was AI is becoming an amplifier, but amplification works two ways. If the execution system underneath is healthy, AI can accelerate insight, coordination, and help aid the decision makers. Not make the decisions, but aid the decision makers. But also, too, on the flip side, if the system underneath is fragmented or disconnected or not well understood, AI will only accelerate confusion, especially if ownership is unclear. AI is just going to amplify the noise. If a process is broken and you try to leverage AI to automate a broken process, it's only going to create more dysfunction. And I think this could be one of the biggest pitfalls businesses fall into the trap, is automating broken processes instead of redesigning operations, or not necessarily redesigning operations from scratch, but having an understanding of what level of maturity does this process or system need to be to consider automation. Another major theme discussed throughout the summit was lifecycle alignment. And what this really honed in on was connecting all that product data, the lifecycle logic, and the configuration, creating stronger alignment across the many different functions: engineering, sales, manufacturing, service. But underneath it, it is really an organizational synergy, synchronization conversation. Because organizations are now trying to manage not just the day-to-day operations of just humming along, but in doing so, continuing to answer many of the difficult questions that arise on a daily basis. What exactly is being sold? What version are we manufacturing? What software is being installed or was installed? What modifications were made? Which systems are connected? Which dependencies exist? And what happens downstream if one component changes? And this level of complexity creates enormous operational pressure, especially when you have disjointed systems that don't talk together, but having to answer a lot of these key critical questions. And when you lack that visibility into these relationships, what may seem small today, that small problem becomes, or it can become, an enterprise level disruption. And that could look like one incorrect bomb can stop a manufacturing line. So that impacts downtime. One disconnected system can delay execution across departments. You get a handoff that's not too robust. It can create some cascading operational failures across the organization. This is why transformation today is no longer simply about just only implementing technology. Transformation is about maintaining operational synergy under increasing complexity. Now, as I further attended and listened into the summit, it was across 2 days. Some other key things that stood out to me during the summit was the human aspect, the human barriers that surface underneath a lot of the technical conversations. And it was fear around poor data quality. You've heard me say a couple times already throughout the show, unclear ownership, resistance to change, weak adoption strategies, lack of cross-functional coordination. Many times you'll have organizations often speak about digital transformation as though it's purely a technology initiative, but many transformation failures are actually execution failures, and not just from the technology side, because we know the technology may work perfectly, may have some bugs, but eventually the teams do get it right and the technology works smoothly. But the organization itself struggles to align around the transformation. And this is where leadership matters, and I'm not just talking from the top leadership, top-down leadership, top-down, bottom, and across. This is where communication matters. This is where the power skill, strategic thinking matters. Because transformation pressure exposes weaknesses that already exist inside the system. And in previous episodes, I talked about change management, the people side of change, and the various and the different stages of change, because that all plays a key part into many of the business transformations that companies want to begin to turn the page and write a new chapter for the business. And there was also a strong focus throughout the summit on scalable customization and intelligent configurations. Because organizations are trying to create systems capable of scaling efficiently while adapting faster to changing customer expectations, because we know customer expectations, they always evolve and they evolve fast. And we know even though every business is different, we know customers expect personalization, customization, all of the flavors, seamless integration, flawless integration, rapid delivery, software compatibility, lifecycle support, and continuous updates. And as I view products, modern products, I view them not as products. I view them as ecosystems. And ecosystems require much stronger operational coordination across businesses. Again, a few times I've said sales, engineering, manufacturing, service, operations, leadership can no longer operate independently from one another. The organization itself must become more and more integrated. But here's the thing, no doubt about it, it takes work and it's hard. But we know everyone wants faster execution. But faster execution without visibility and without the connection and the synergy does create those instability moments. Also, too, keep in mind that faster automation without that operational clarity creates larger failures at scale over time. Faster decision-making without alignment creates only confusion, and sometimes more meetings does not solve it. How I view it, the organizations that succeed in the next decade will not simply be the ones who adopted the most AI and who are really skilled in AI, but really the organizations capable of maintaining visibility, coordination, and control while operating under increasing complexity. And one of the final thoughts I kept coming back to after leaving the summit, as I kept thinking on the summit and some of the key insights, was modern business transformation is no longer just about technology implementation. It's becoming a systems design challenge. Organizations must continue to answer these questions. or get better at answering these questions. How does work actually move? How do decisions flow? Where is there roadblocks or operational friction? Where does it exist that can be impeding our time to market, or if we're not getting the results? Where is the friction happening? What dependencies are invisible? What are the unknown unknowns? Where are coordination breakdowns occurring? And what happens when operational pressure increases? And this is just not from the standpoint of a project, a program, or the PMO office addressing and answering these questions. This is across the entire business, really looking at addressing these questions and understanding. And the perspectives may be different as well. Because we know when pressure reveals the truth about execution systems, it's not just under ideal conditions, but the truth reveals itself about execution systems under stress. And we know in many instances, operational speed, complexity, and pressure all converge together. And so the question is, how are you built to handle this? As complexity increases by the weeks, the months, and the years, can your current execution system sustain it? So no, the biggest takeaway from the summit was not just simply only AI. It was not only just about the software. It's not just about the digital twins. It was not just about lifecycle management, PLMs, CLMs. The deeper lesson was this, what I took away. Organizations are approaching a level of operational complexity that many existing execution systems were never designed to handle. And the companies that gain the real competitive advantage moving forward will not simply automate faster. They will build stronger execution systems underneath the automation itself. Because complexity is increasing whether your organization is ready or not. And the real question is whether organizations can maintain visibility, coordination, and control as complexity grows. And so asking yourself today, again, as I mentioned throughout the show, no business is perfect. We utilize many different tools and systems across many of the various functions. But again, go back to the question I asked at the beginning of the show. Not having that single source of truth. Is that helping to gain quicker wins and a faster pace into the market to hold the position or increase the position? Or could it be what is really holding some parts of the business back by not being interconnected and not having that synergy that helps to accelerate? So if today's discussion made you think differently about visibility, coordination, and complexity inside your organization, I encourage you to take the Execution Intelligence Assessment. It's designed to help uncover some of the hidden friction points that may slow execution and impact results. Think of it as a roadmap of opportunity. We know we need to continuously improve, but where do we start first to begin that improvement, whether it's across the structure, architecture, or even leadership? So you'll find the link to the assessment in the episode description and in the show notes. And if you enjoyed the episode, I encourage you to share it with another project leader, operations leader, or transformation professional navigating complexity inside the organization, inside their organization. And I'm going to end today's show on this. The promise does not come without the process.
Execution separates professionals from leaders. Stay disciplined, stay intentional, stay sharp. This is Project Management Masterclass.